Oh, thank God that didn't get there. All right. Thanks, Patch. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into a new edition of the Batter Up podcast, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mike and the old ops guy with you. Old ops guy, how we doing?
Doing much better than this morning. If you also see our president hanging in there to get
And then he
official
leaves. He
recognition, and
leaves
then he
as
just
soon as you
jumps
bring him
out.
up.
When I'm going to give him recognition, he jumps out. Now, that's okay. Much better
Shout
than
out,
this morning, up
Patch.
and awake and ready to go.
All right. Yeah. So today's show, we're going to cover some uh the first two participants in the home run derby, about who's a better long-term fit for the New York Yankees based on a texting conversation Mark and I had earlier this week. But I want to start with two shout outs first. First, Jose Miranda of the Twins, 12 consecutive at bats with a base hit, tying a major league record that ended yesterday. He also got hit by a pitch, but that does not count as a formal at bat. So I want that to be known. But 12 consecutive at bats with a base hit. I don't think I've ever seen that unless you just count Chipper Jones against the Mets. And,
Of course, bring up the one guy that makes us sick.
he also got. I mean, your stomach's already bothering. might as well go for whole.
Right?
I, listen, it's an impressive feat.
It
12
is.
straight at bats with a base hit. Uh,
Absolutely.
for a Minnesota Twins team that's playing pretty well right now, too. They're playing a rubber game with the Houston Astros today, who've also been rolling. Uh, but don't tell other people that because they just want to believe the Astros were done. The other shout out goes to the Chicago Cubs, not because of the way they've played on the field, but this afternoon for the Cubs game, it'll be the first time in Cubs history they will have an all female broadcast
Right.
today.
Right. I heard about that this morning at some point.
Yeah,
This is pretty cool.
I saw it on the Twitter machine. I will not call it X Elon, even though X marks the spot. Yeah, so they're having their first ever all female broadcast. So shout out the Cubs and shout out,
Very cool.
yeah, very cool. I think more teams should start doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, the way sports are changing for the better, we need to have this more in every sport, not just sports that are surrounded for women like the WNBA. Baseball, football, but every one of them should have more presence of women sports reporters.
Yeah. So shout out the Cubs for doing that. All right. Now we'll get to the real agenda. So this upcoming week in Major League Baseball is the final week before the All-Star break. If you listen to the midweek edition, which is now up wherever you listen to your podcast, I went over the starters for the All-Star game. And to be honest with you, the fans actually got it right. But I think Major League Baseball got it right too with how the voting goes. The top two at each position, that's like a vote off. But that being said, I'm not going to complain about fan voting. We'll get into the All Star game in a sec because they're going to announce the rest of the rosters later today.
Right.
But the first two participants in the home run derby have also been announced, and they are Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles and Alec Bohm of the Philadelphia Phillies. So those are your first two participants in the derby. So it got me thinking, Mark, who's someone you want to see in the derby this year?
Besides, these two are perfect picks, to play. We always say we want to see certain people, but you want to know what? I want to see something different. And a lot of people we know are bowing out already. Shohei Ohtani has said no because of
The
injury.
Dodgers said it would might bother his elbow.
Correct. And you're seeing a lot of teams are sending in notice for this, such as Aaron Judge has already said he will not
Yeah.
participate and stuff like that. So if you want me to go on, let me watch somebody who's gonna have fun with it. And I would say we go right back to Baltimore and Adley Rutschman.
Ooh. He had fun
I
last year doing it.
Absolutely. He had a fun time doing it last year, even though he was not perfectly on stride. This year he's one of the most solid hitters and one of the more powerful hitting catchers in baseball. And if he wants to have fun, this is where to do it.
It's a good one. Julio Rodriguez would also be another fun option, even though he's not having a great year.
And that's the only reason why I would think they would hold him out. And the same thing I would be thinking like Corbin Carroll after last year. The home run derby changes you if you don't realize.
Yeah, just ask Bobby Abreu.
And David Wright.
Okay, I'm gonna go with two just because one of them you mentioned at the top. I want to see Aaron Judge. I want to see Aaron Judge do it for this reason. The home run derby is baseball's version of the dunk contest.
Yep.
How many years did basketball fans say we want LeBron to do the dunk contest? And that sanctimonious guy never did it. He said one year he was going to do it. He wound up never doing it. Thanks a lot, LeBron. That's why you'll never be better than Michael because you never did the dunk contest.
And you had to weasel your son way in onto a team to get him a contract. Oh God, that wasn't live, was it? Yes, it was.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Hmm.
So I want the best. Aaron Judge, if you're the best, do the Derby. I know you've won, I believe, at least one. I don't
I
know,
know he won one, yeah.
but come and do it. This is for the fans. This isn't for your ego. This isn't for you know. This is for the fans. If I want the best, I want the best. But if you're not going to do it, I want Bobby Witt Jr.
But Bobby
That's
Wood
the
was another
other
one
guy
on
I
my list,
want.
yes.
You
Was
want
on my
young,
AL
you want
list.
enthusiasm. I want Bobby Witt. The Royals are having a really good year, surprising a lot of people. Let's have Bobby Witt in the home run derby.
Bobby Witt is already a star in Major League Baseball. It didn't take him long.
No,
I would love to see him as another participant. But going over to the NL and you look around, I want to go from our team, Mike. And I'm not saying Pete. I really don't want Pete to do it because I don't want him to hurt himself. But I want Vientos.
he
I
said
want to
he would do it if he got invited.
I want to see this kid turn loose because I have done nothing since day one but back this kid from the start. And I wish I could be like one of these guys and have a one of his card and be able to get him on X or Twitter machine, as Mike likes to call it, or somehow and trade a card for a ball from him. I have done nothing but support him. I think he would be a fun young participant.
He would be. I I mean that'd be a good one. I would not count against Alonso doing it. I think that he loves it.
If
So I'd have
asked,
no
I'm
problem.
sure he might come back and do it. I mean, last year it had nothing to do with his power. It had to do with the fact that the person who was throwing the ball couldn't get it there. So I mean, whatever. The home run derby, we will never get to see the likes of when it was Ken Griffey Jr., Mark McGuire, and we'll never see home run derbies like that again. Those are when Oh God, that's when the Century had the golden
Chris
baseballs.
Berman on the commentary.
Yeah,
Back,
I mean,
back, 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 back.
you're not going to get home run derbies like they used to be. However, today with the Statcast and everything is different. I mean, in the eight hungry guys who are at the top of their positions or division or whatever you want to call it, and offer them the shot. Let's not pick it because of fan favorite. Let's pick it because of the people who are doing, like Christian Walker from Arizona. It's got 20 plus home runs. Why
If it
not?
was at Dodger Stadium, he would win it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if we want to take about the people who are at the top, you got to ask them. That's how it has to be.
Yeah, I just want we want the best of the best. That's what we want. That's what the home run derby should be. It's a fun, especially because the game is an exhibition now. It doesn't decide home field advantage in the World Series. So digress there. But speaking of, so the All-Star game rosters will be announced tonight. The starters were announced the other night. So this has sparked a very interesting conversation because Paul Skeens, who was the number one pick last year in the draft, has come up and made an instant impact for the Pirates. And if you look at his mustache, he kind of has a pirate stash going, if you look at it. I think he's got to be an all-star this year just because of what the game represents. I think he has to be there. And his numbers bear it out too.
Paul Skeens has taken this sport by by its balls, literally, and has commanded his starts and has made an absolute case to make it to the All Star game. Here comes the question: Is will he, in the short amount of time that he's been up, does he deserve it? I may say so,
Yeah.
but doesn't mean what I say is gonna be the fortuitous answer. But I believe he belongs there? Yes. I mean, if you want to look at, I mean, All Stars, as Mike said, the team is getting released tonight, and to go away from saying, yeah, I would like to see all my favorites on the Mets. As watching baseball this year, I actually have started watching the Houston Astros a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I hate the guy, Jose Altuve is making a good case
Well,
lately.
he's starting. He's starting
Yeah,
second baseman.
I know. I mean, but going off pace with players who I want to see. I mean, I know, but he has just put everything behind him and is really just a good baseball.
You know what I love about Altuve is people still boo him wherever he goes, and he just brushes it off. Like
Yep,
he I'm leading off, and then 9 times out of 10, lead off bomb. That'll shut you up very quickly.
exactly. He's taking this with a grain of salt. It was never physically proven he had anything underneath. We know something was going on, whatever. It's over with. And this guy is playing almost at a higher ability than he was with the cheating.
And here's going to be the interesting question on Altuve, and then we'll get back into Skeens
Yeah.
because I do want to get into the numbers really quickly.
Yes.
When Altuve's retired, there's going to be the very interesting case about Altuve for the Hall of Fame and whether or not this scandal will, excuse me, prevent him from going in. I'm very curious to see once he retires how he looks on a ballot for the first time. I'm not
Good,
saying he'd get
definitely
in
good
first ballot.
podcast.
I'm just looking at the percentages, just based on what happened with some of the steroid guys and their percentages and how long some of them lasted. But we'll digress on that. But as for Skeens, he's 5-0 with a 2.12. And here's the kicker: 78 strikeouts to 12 walks in 59 innings pitched. He's in.
No fun. He absolutely,
I don't
without
know if
question,
he'll start the game, but he's in the game.
without question. again, I've repeated myself. I mean, those numbers are Doc Gooden-esque. I mean, you haven't seen a pitcher like him in a long time. It's not only good for the sport, but the guy deserves very well to be where he is and has possibilities of doing something we haven't seen in a long time with other awards. So,
And it's kind of an easy pick too, because I don't know who else from the Pirates you're going to take.
I mean, you have to. I mean, he's been often injured on and off. I mean, when you look at stars that are left, O'Neill Cruz is not having such a bad
He's not having a
season.
great year.
He's not having a great one, but like you said, you don't know how many stars are really there. You think him, Brian Hayes, obviously Paul Keens, and that's about it. No offense to any player on the Pirates that's in Major League Baseball. I couldn't get there, so you've done it right. But
The only other guy I would be willing to accept, and there's a caveat to it, would be Andrew McCutchen, only because it's probably his last season.
and that would be fair, but he has to come out and say this is it.
No, I don't think he has.
And that's the key because I'm all for the what's the word the tribute send off
The send off, yeah.
the send off. They did it right by Cal Ripken, Albert Pujols, Miggy
Tony Gwynn,
Cabrera, Tony. They did it
may
right.
rest in
If
peace.
if the Cutchin comes out, will come out and say that this is it for him, then yes, I can understand. But no, if you're going to come back another year, then wait until you're say,
Yeah.
hey, oh God, sorry, um, till your goodbye tour goes on. Otherwise, I don't think he's having the year to consider him for a spot for that.
Yeah, so Paul Skeens, in our book, you're an all-star.
Yes.
And you're also on and maybe in the group Smash Mouth, but that's a whole nother conversation. But the one thing I love the All Star game. I always have. I've never loved the rule that every team gets a representative, just for the fact of who the hell are you going to pick for the Chicago White Sox to get? No,
It's
it's
not an
probably going to be
unfair
Garrett
question.
Crochet, but I mean, is
I
he
mean,
even going to be a White
go
Sox by
ahead.
the All Star game? They're talking about trading the guy.
Mike and I and other members, Dan and even Patch during his short stint on Batters Up this season, have all said we don't know what this White Sox team really is. I mean, yeah, they have players, but Mike brings up a very good point is
They
who the
have
heck are you gonna send? I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, I believe, you look at Paul Zambal, as Mike made a good point. You look at Gavin Sheik. I mean, otherwise, I mean,
there's nothing there.
there's nothing there. And it's sad to say because they're at one time the White Sox were a team. I mean, were in the days of yore. I mean, I guess Garrett Crochet because he's got 11 quality starts. I had to go look it up because, to be honest, I'm not that up and familiar with the White Sox, but I really haven't cared a lot about them a lot.
The funny thing about the White Sox is a couple of years ago, they won 90 something games, made the playoffs, and you thought, man, they're going to be good in a few years. They're going to continue to get better. No, they've done nothing but regress. And it's sad to see, but I again they'll probably go Garrett Crochet. That'll
That would
probably
be I mean, in the words of the great Rick Zolzer, this team is Papa. I mean, Crochet is the obvious choice. I mean, if you really want to break you all down.
right.
I
But
mean,
here comes the point. Because you have to get a representative from every team, you might be taking away a spot from somebody who's way more deserving on a better team. argument's sake, and I'm not saying he's going to miss because if this guy misses the All Star game, I will start a campaign. If Seth Lugo, who's never pitched this well in his life, misses the All Star game because we had to get Garrett Crochet into the All Star game, people would throw a fit because of the year Seth Lugo's having. I'm not saying Seth Lugo would be the guy to miss. I am just giving you people an example.
Right. I mean, for as many years Mike and I have been on the same podcast together, every year at the same time we have the same discussion of players getting into the All-Star game and players left out. And there's never been a real simple way of figuring out who should get in as an extra. As the starters wise, I think they got it right.
Yeah,
Personally,
starters they nailed.
I think they got it right. When it comes to the reserves, as they call it, yes, I understand there has to be a member from every team. If Seth Lugo does not make the All Star team, then then Trevor Bauer's getting a contract down the first day afterwards because that would be the only most other bizarre thing in the world that could happen.
Oh, I can think of other bizarre things that'll happen, but yeah, we don't have to dive into that. But anyway, so yeah, just thoughts on the All Star game. When the full rosters are revealed, we'll cover that on the midweek edition of Batter Up next this week. All right, let's dive into the New York Yankees for a minute. So here's the caveat to this. You have two Met fans talking about the Yankees. We're going to get into our little down the line fantasy in a few minutes. But something happened the other night that caught my attention. Aaron Judge's personal hitting coach weighed in on the Yankees during their 8-4 loss to the Reds on the 4th of July. They got swept by the Reds, by the way. Cheap plug.
Mm-hmm.
They've lost 13 out of 18 while he's hitting like an MVP. Richard Schneck, I hope I said that right, wrote on Thursday during the 8-4 loss. He's Judge's own personal hitting coach. He called the Yankees player development, quote, terrible. Now, Aaron Boone and Judge both kind of said, it's not a big deal. Mark, do you think this is a big deal?
Well, when I first saw it on the rundown, to be honest, I had not heard the story. I had to go look it up because I didn't want to sound like an idiot on the podcast. And then I'm reading into this and I'm like, wait a second. This guy has his own personal hitting coach. And this guy is allowed to rip the Yankee organization to shreds and not have to feel any fire breath on the back and go, oh no, because I'm keeping your $40 million guy hitting bombs, you can't do anything to me. He's not Elliot Ness. He's not untouchable. Okay. Something happens always to people who speak out when they shouldn't. I'm not saying he's not wrong that the player development in the Yankees organization is pure shit because it is. Sorry, Dan. Sorry, Bill, but that's really how it is right now. I mean, and we'll get into more, but when you look at what the Yankees have payroll wise, you can't not expect them to be in the position they're in all honesty. Be honest, if I had a 3-4-5 like that, even often injured on and off the field, I'd feel very confident as an owner. But you cannot. Goes back to the days of this guy gets flown out so he doesn't get tired on the bus, or this guy gets no. Nobody should be treated specially. Come on, nobody needs their own personal this. What's next? You're gonna get a the old golf cart back and they're going to get a caddy to choose his bat for him, and we're going to sit there and select. Oh no, dear, it's 400 feet away. We want to use the 8 iron here, so let's go with this. Come on, this is where baseball and a team like the Yankees, no offense, being one of the most popular teams in baseball, are gonna get away with this because they're the Yankees. But obviously, other players aren't seeming to complain about it, as this is the first we're hearing about it in 3 months of baseball. And whether they are upset about it or not, I don't think we're ever going to hear.
You just said the key. Whether they're upset about it or not, we'll never know because it'll get buried. And if someone were to speak out, if it's a young guy, they're sent to AAA. If it's a veteran, they're either cut or traded tomorrow. You can't, because the fact of the matter is, and this is where I place blame on Aaron Boone, because I wish Aaron Boone would listen. We get it. The Yankees have struggled over the last month or so, including having, I think they still have the worst record in all baseball over the last 20 games. You know who Aaron Boone kind of, I'm going to say this, and I want it to sound, I'll explain in a second. Aaron Boone has become the Robert Saleh of Major League Baseball. And I say it like that because of this. During football season, I beg Robert Saleh just one time to get up to a podium, slam his fist, and be like, no, this stuff can't happen. And we'll turn it around. We'll do this. That's Aaron Boone. He's very monotone at the podium. He's more fiery on the field than he is behind a microphone. And when a guy who's not with your organization comes out and calls out your player development, he calls out your players, they want to be like, no, I don't want to hear from this person. And I wouldn't even care if it upset Aaron Judge, because Aaron Judge contractually obligated to play for the New York Yankees. He's not going to request a trade if you talk poorly of his hitting coach. It's not like it's a family member.
Right.
Speak up for your guys and be like, listen, we're in a rough patch right now. We'll get it turned around. But I'm also tired of hearing that. So at some point, Aaron Boone, if you want to grow a set and show some emotion that's not you yelling at an umpire, that'd be great. But, I digress.
And I understand it, but you can't put one player's need. Look, I understand Aaron Judge is hitting as well as he is, so there's something that this hitting coach is doing and doing it right, obviously. Then why not is Aaron Judge saying, hey, look what this guy's doing for me? Maybe the whole team would benefit. That's where I say.
Yeah, fly him in to coach the rest of the team.
Turn like it. All of a sudden, we see Oswaldo Cabrera hitting 498-foot home runs. I mean, there we go. That would prove the hitting coach does it all. And I chose the shortest one out of all of them to make it fair.
Oh, yeah. All right. So let's dive into the conversation we had over text the other day.
Been waiting for this.
So the Yankees this past winter landed Juan Soto. And we all know Juan Soto's a free agent at the end of the year. And, we'll see who winds up signing him, whether it be the Yankees or somebody else. We were texting about the Yankees' offensive struggles, talking about how they need a bat, this and that. And I think you brought up the idea of trading for Vlad Jr., despite things he said in the past. I've also heard people on WFAN mention trading for Vlad Jr. But then it got me thinking because Hal Steinbrenner said earlier this year, he talked about cutting payroll.
Well,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
like, well, if you trade for Vlad, which one are you going to have long term? You want Soto or do you want Vlad Jr.? You texted me back. Sounds like a podcast topic. So here we
And
are.
here we just, I mean, when Mike said it, I'm looking at it and it's like, I could not give a clear, straight answer right then and there. And if I were to write it, it would be something like 4 or 5 pages long and with a lot of spelling mistakes, as these guys know. Um, when looking at this situation, you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., one of the best hitters in baseball, whose contract time is up in Toronto.
He's
However,
arbitration eligible for one more year, I believe.
right, his time is up. And the question becomes, is Toronto going to sign him long term? Does he want to stay in Toronto long term? I mean, if Shohei Ohtani would have landed in Toronto, I don't think we'd be having this discussion
Nope.
right now. But the question becomes is what can Toronto get out of this? And Toronto is in a pretty unique position because Vladimir Guerrero is not a bottom tier ball player by any means. We know that. We know that by watching him play. We know he can field. We know he can hit. That being said, they're 16 games out of first place. Okay. And you got to start thinking, what are we going to do? Now, Guerrero is going to hit no matter what stadium team you put him in. That's not the issue. The
They're
question
also
is,
8.5 out of the wild card.
okay. The question is, what are you going to get for him? Well, the kid isn't old. The kid isn't not even in the prime of his career yet. He's getting there. The guy is an established ball player who could DH and could play first. So you get that opportunity. I'm not going to say he's the best runner in baseball, but definitely has good vision. So I look at all the teams that are not the Los Angeles Dodgers because that would be the only team that's not going to get them because they have no money. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to say no money. They have nowhere to put them. So let's just rule out Los Angeles and let's look at the rest of it. We talk about Juan Soto and the Yankees. Now, we know what the Yankees gave up to get Soto. How the heck San Diego missed Ben Rice? I have no idea, but whatever. Um, the Yankees have nothing left to make trades with, unless they're giving up actual starters, and I don't see that being the case. So I don't see
And
the
they're
Yankees.
probably not trading Jason Dominguez.
No, absolutely not. You're not going to see Volpe traded, stuff like that. Those are players that are cemented into the Yankees. They're not going anywhere. And but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. seems a lot better than Anthony Rizzo right now. Could you make a deal with Toronto in that sort of aspect? But then you come into the end of the year. Do we keep Soto? Do we keep Vlad? You were already paying it. You can't because you can't pay them all what they want. So the question is, if I'm the Yankees, who seems more valuable to me? Is it Juan Soto or Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? And if I say Vladimir Guerrero Jr., then I'm bullshitting everybody. No, of course it's Juan Soto. Everybody is like this kid since he's been in Washington. The Mets didn't have the organizational structure or the money to get him out of Washington back then. They were hoping to get him while they could when he was in San Diego, but the Yankees are the Yankees. He's gonna, well, we'll see. He's putting up in very impressive numbers. Anybody can at Yankee Stadium. He's been injured twice, but that's Juan Soto's, resume. At the end of the season, who am I going to want? And if I ended the season now, Sorry, Starling Marte, you're no longer my right fielder, and welcome Juan Soto. Let Vlad go to the Yankees.
All right, so if you're the Yankees, you're picking Soto.
If I'm the Mets, I'm taking Soto away from the Yankees.
No. But the question is, if you're the Yankees,
I don't care. Oh, I know. No, if I'm the Yankees, honestly, yes, no. Obviously, I'm keeping Soto. It
well,
would be. It makes no sense to give up everything they did, just like for Texas
for
with
1 year,
Scherzer and getting DeGrom.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on the fact of I would rather keep. So now, the one caveat to keeping Vlad is he would be cheaper than Soto.
Absolutely.
And if cutting payroll is what the Yankees want, that would be a way of doing it. Now, can you form a deal around maybe Oswaldo Peraza or Oswaldo Cabrera along with Spencer Jones if that entices Toronto? I've said this, I've written about this, I've said this on this podcast. I want the Blue Jays to blow this thing up. For this reason, they haven't done anything. They have not done anything. They haven't proven anything outside of a year they played in Florida. They've proven nothing. This core just hasn't gotten it done. And I get it. You're signaling that what you did was a mistake. But at the same time, where do you see yourself in a year or two if you're the Toronto Blue Jays? You're in last place in the American League East. When I go to the standings in the American League and I go through the wild card, there's 3 teams below the Toronto Blue Jays in the standings. The Angels, who've played most of the year without Mike Trout.
Again.
The Oakland A's, who soon to be will be Sacramento bound, and we know they stink. Although they put up 19 runs yesterday.
I
And the Chicago White Sox, who are living proof of a dumpster fire. So how can you say you're good when you those are the teams below you? The Tampa Bay Rays, who have so many damn injuries in their rotation, they have a better record than you. The Boston Red Sox, who we thought were going to have a crappy year, they're in front of you.
And all of a sudden, the last place Houston Astros are right back where they could have been.
Well, no, I'm just going through your division for a second because what makes you think in 2 years with this group you're going to be better than the Yankees? You're going to be better than the Baltimore Orioles. You know, Tampa Bay's going to be interesting. Who knows what they are? The Red Sox at some point are going to spend some sort of money, you would think. What are we going to do if you're the Toronto Blue Jays? Starting over is not the worst thing in the world. If you can get a deal like the Padres got for Juan Soto, or a deal like the Washington Nationals got for Juan Soto. By the way, how good have the Nationals been at winning that deal? CJ Abrams is a stud. Mackenzie Gore is a stud. They just called up another guy from that deal, James Wood. I keep calling him James Woods, but there's a whole nother conversation about that. The Toronto Blue Jays they're like Jimmy Eat World. They're in the middle.
Yeah, and you're
And they're
not wrong.
stuck
And
there.
I mean, we just saw them trade. What do you call it? Biggio's son got traded. Kevin Biggio got traded
Yeah,
to
to
the
they
Giants.
went to the Dodgers.
Sorry, Dodgers. Right state, wrong team. Um, if you look at this team, and if you're going to blow it up, I mean, like you, in terms of the way Mike uses it, in other words, trade it away. Let's look at the names that could potentially hit the quote unquote trade market, whatever. Guerrero, Springer Jr., Justin Turner, and I'm being nice on this next one, Dalton Varsho. He's actually had a horrible year with the bat, but it just is moving around the bases. Now, if I look at the pitching, there's a name that's going to come up immediately, and that's Jose Barrios. Mike? Would they even get anything for him now?
Oh, you'd get some for Barrios, but I wouldn't move him. I would move UC Kikuchi, impending free agent. The two interesting names are Bassett and Gosman, who both have a year left.
I
And I'll
think
tell you this, I would take Chris Bassett if I'm a team in contention because you know what you're going to get.
Mike and I have already had this talk. If you don't think that, we both, he actually brought it up first. I said, we have some good pay. He said, I want Bassett back. And I agree with him. I think that Chris Bassett was very good with New York. I think he was a little salty he didn't get offered a bigger contract, and that's why he left so easily. I think he'd be welcome back in open arms. Gosman, I have no problem with. Kikuchi, I was high on 2 years ago, and I was probably high at the time, so that's why I was so big on the guy. He's 4-8. No, thank you. He can stay where he is.
Well, he's in an impending free agent. That's why I'm saying they're going to move.
Right. Obviously, like you said, with Bassett and Goffin having a year left, it's more intriguing for Toronto to work with as they could possibly get more because of the contract. So if I'm us, if I'm the New York Mets, yeah, would I like Gausman? Yeah. Do I see it more reliable to get Bassett on a trade? Because the Mets have pieces they can use. We already know what they're not gonna give up, but there are pieces they can use to get someone like a Chris Bassett.
Yeah, we will cover the trade deadline more intently as we get
Yeah.
closer to it. But we thought the Vlad versus Soto competition would be interesting dynamic. Yankee fans, you could comment on this depending on who you want, who you'd rather have long term. Uh, just for argument's sake, we're not saying both, just based on what Hal Steinbrenner said, where he said he was cutting payroll. All right. So let's get into some teams who are playing well as we get closer to the trade deadline and we look more closely at the standings in baseball. Although, to be fair, I've been looking at the standings for a little bit now just because,
Into
well, the Mets have played better and they're right in the thick of things.
the thick of it.
And they're 2.5 back of that last wild card spot, currently held by the St. Louis Cardinals, who have slowly but surely turned it around after what was an abysmal start. I say that they got obliterated yesterday by the Nationals and are currently tied with the Nationals in the top of the fourth, 2-2. So there's your update on that patch. Nolan Gorman and Dylan Carlson with the RBIs. Kyle Gibson on the mound. So the Cardinals have turned it around, and it coincides with getting Wilson Contreras back from the injured list. Kind of completes the lineup. I still don't love the Cardinals pitching, and I really don't love. Yeah, I really just don't love their starting pitching. I don't. Lance Lynn is all right. He got tattooed yesterday. Gibson's all right. Steven Matz just got transferred to the 60-day IL. Outside of Sonny Gray, the rotation is okay.
It's a hodgepodge. It's another success story. I don't know if you really want to call it that, but in the beginning of the season, yeah, we have noted multiple times how bad the Cardinals were playing. As of lately, yeah, they have turned it up. And for Mike and I, we said the Mets answer was going to be at the trade deadline where they stood. And we said they had to be within 5 games. Well, the Mets have done that. There were 2.5 games of the third wild card spot. The question is going to be, like Mike said, is what are teams going to do? And we'll have a better coverage on this as it gets closer. But you have to you take teams like the St. Louis Cardinals and look at them that they do have all this experience, and not to count them out just because they got tattooed. Just because Lance Lynn got tattooed, we've watched Severino get blasted and whatnot. It's the experience on that team that worries me more than anything else.
Yeah, and Goldschmidt hasn't had the greatest year, but he's starting to hit a little bit more. Arenado hasn't had a great year. So if those guys have great second halves, the
Hmm.
Cardinals are going to be right there in the thick of things.
Correct.
If they don't, it's going to be very interesting to see how they uh, view themselves. I mean, this is just the National League as a whole for a second. The Cardinals have that third wild card. The Diamondbacks and Mets are 2.5 back. The San Francisco Giants are 3 back. The Pirates are 4 back. The Reds and Nationals are 4.5 each, and the Cubs are 6 games back. And what I find interesting here is the Giants, they're okay, they're not world beaters. The Pirates, I think the Pirates are going to go into sell mode just for the fact that they didn't expect to be here, and especially if Skeens and Jared Jones are going to be on innings limits, and
Yeah,
they're going
well,
to get
schemes
get shut,
definitely.
and they're going to get shut down at some point. Like I think they'll pull back a little bit. The Reds are very interesting. They just haven't put it all together yet, even though they swept the Yankees this weekend, but they just
Uh,
can't get one foot in front of the other. The Nationals, I don't think the Nationals expect to be there, so they might sell off some pieces. Nothing major, just guys expiring probably. The Cubs are the most fascinating team because the Cubs have a win now team. They just haven't played well.
not
They're
as of
eight,
lately.
they're 8 under somehow.
Well, teams go through bad stretches. We've seen it. It's not anything unheard of. I mean, the Cubs were quietly put together a good team with Morel and Bellinger, Ian Happ, Michael Bush of all doing. Like Micah said, they just have not been producing wins. Um, the Mets proved to the fact. I mean, I felt bad for the guy that he got crushed by the one of the teams that pursued him. And Minaga proves he has a weakness. Okay, so he's not super Chinese man. He's just a Superman. That's all he is. He's a good pitcher.
Well, here's the thing about Imanaga because he was so good to start the year. But now when he's making starts second time through the league, teams have adjusted. It
Right.
started with the Mets. It's kind of gone through the NL Central teams. He had a really good start against the Phillies the other night. Still got the loss, but I mean, it's the Phillies, and the Phillies are having one of those phenomenal seasons. But outside of Justin Steele had a really good start the other day against the Angels. But I just for a team that went all in, and when I say they went all in, it's the signing of Imanaga, it's the bringing in of Craig Counsell,
Hmm.
it's the bringing back of Cody Bellinger. You're signaling to everybody, okay, we're ready to go. And right now, as we speak, you're 8 games under, you're 6 out of that last wild card, and you have to jump one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 teams to get to the third wild card spot.
There's a name on here who I spoke highly about, and that's Cody Bellinger. And when you look at his numbers, they're not blasting off the page, but he put together quietly a solid season 279 home runs, 37 RBIs. If the Cubs find themselves in any type of, we're not going, he's the only one I see who will be traded because he has no long term real deal. The 3 year contract has so many opt outs in it.
But
It
it's
doesn't
opt
matter.
outs, yeah.
It doesn't matter. So obviously, I mean, I would not look at the Yankees to make a move on it or something. But there are a couple of teams that I could see willing to give up big time to keep them going. And one of those teams could be the Kansas City Royals. And I know that sounds weird, but that's one team I've had looked at for it. is the Kansas City Royals, as they're rebuilding, take on that contract that has opt outs. There's nothing wrong with it. But you bring in him and pair him up, you get another bat into that lineup. I'd watch out. The Kansas City Royals are 48 and 43. I didn't think I'd be saying that at this point.
They're a game and a half out of that last wild card spot in the American League.
Right. And there's a lot to contend in the American League. We knew that. But for the Royals to be in the position they're in, they're buyers. They're not sellers.
No, I've always felt if you're within four games at the deadline, depending on who you are, you have to buy. You could sell. So I'm going to make the case for a second for teams like the Reds and Nationals.
Okay.
More so the Nationals than the Reds, because I think the Reds have to buy just based on what the expectation was this year. The Washington Nationals are like the Royals. They weren't supposed to be in this spot that they're in. But I wouldn't consider them buying or selling. Because if you sell and you're selling off pieces that are on expiring deals, maybe it's Patrick Corbin, maybe it's, someone else. You're not selling. You're long-term buying.
Okay.
Because you're out of the Corbin contract. Now, all of a sudden, that frees up however much $1 million, left. You could go spend that maybe over the off season, or trickle down effect. I can make a secondary deal for a guy who's got longer term and could help me, maybe not for 2024, but 2025.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because the Nationals have figured out who's the future of this organization. It's now CJ Abrams. It's now James Wood. It's now Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray when he returns, Keibert Ruiz. That's a nice nucleus for the Washington Nationals. So if they have to figure out getting out of Corbin's deal by making a trade, it could be a long-term investment. Kind of like what you're saying about the Royals.
Yeah.
But you're saying in pursuit of buying. And you buy a Bellinger who, by the way, he'll opt out after this year, put himself back out on the market next year, and go somewhere else. I think another really interesting spot for Cody Bellinger, and I can't believe I'm kind of saying this because it really craws at me. Ronald Acuna's out for the year.
I've been thinking that too, but the question is, what are they going to be willing to give up?
Right. What are they going to give up? Or do they go the route they went in 21 where they acquired multiple guys to replace Acuna?
And I think that's where you have to go. And I'm going to pass it right back to you, Mike, because I don't think trying to buy his position with the knowledge of him possibly coming back, whether it's before or after the All-Star game next
Well,
year,
he's not
is a
coming
smart
back
move.
this year.
No. I'm saying before or after the All-Star break
gotcha.
next year. I think personally buying a tag team and not spending the end of the world might be the right move, but we all know Atlanta.
Oh, we know Atlanta. Know Atlanta too well. The other team playing well in the American League, and we've talked about them at length already, the Houston Astros have awoken from the dead, and they're 2.5 back in the wild card, and they are 2 back of the Seattle Mariners. And shame on you, Seattle. You had them dead and buried, and you couldn't get the job done.
What a fun race this is going to be to watch. Just these two teams. But, let's forget about
By the way,
baseball.
there's another Bellinger spot, Seattle.
That's also very true. I mean, Seattle has proven, without a doubt, they're not a one-person team, as a lot of analysts said they were, going with all about the Julio Rodriguez. Yeah, I understand Julio Rodriguez leads you in a couple of categories, but Kyle Raleigh's doing it. Ty France is doing it. Mitch Garver's having a weird season, in my opinion. But there is no better name, as Mike has said and multiple times, There's no better name than the Big Dumper in Cal Raleigh. But
Greatest nickname ever.
it's not just the batting it's not the lineup, the rotation between Logan Gilbert and Luis Castillo and George Kirby and don't forget Bryce Miller have all been pitching so well that is going to make this Houston race. It's going to come down to the matchups these two teams face off against each other with.
Yeah, Seattle could get themselves another bat. That'd be great. Bellinger. They should have just kept Vlad Jr. there after the series they had with the Blue Jays. They have with the Blue Jays, but they need bats. The Astros, I give the Astros a ton of credit because they could have folded and said we had a really nice run. They didn't fold. So that's the pride of the Astros. And with the amount of injuries they've had, especially in that rotation, give them a ton of credit for the work they've put in. Altuve's still doing it. Bregman's gotten hot. Jordan Alvarez has been fantastic. Eventually, they'll get Kyle Tucker back.
Right.
So the Astros are going for it. All right. All right. Finally, we'll get into the series to watch this week, and then we will close this out. We got a heavyweight matchup, a heavyweight matchup in Philly this week. The Phillies host the Los Angeles Dodgers in what should be an epic 3-game series, potentially a playoff preview.
Oh, I say it's your NLCS preview right here.
See, I'm not willing to go there just because the Dodgers' refusal at times to get there in certain years makes me say,
I know, but just with what's on the field on that team.
oh, yeah. And by the way, the Phillies are going to get back Harper and Schwarber at some point this week, too,
right.
which is just insanity to me. But,
I mean, you have to give credit where credit is due for these two teams. It's a heavyweight slug fest. I mean, Trey Turner looks like he didn't miss a step since being out.
no, he's been red hot.
He's back to playing when he left, so he just needed a rest. That's all.
Here's the funny thing: you could do like take your picks of starters at each position for these two teams, and you still come out with an all-star.
You could build a winning franchise from just picking,
just combining. So, like, who'd you rather have play first base? Bryce Harper, Freddie Freeman.
All right, Bryce Harper just got DH, so there you go. There's your DH. You're giving me Freddie Freeman.
So you'd rather have Harper DH than Shohei Ohtani?
Fuck you! This is impossible. I wasn't prepared. This was brand new.
That's just the comment I'm making.
Oh no, it's a perfect thing because we went into it blindly and you got what you wanted out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. Would you shortstop Trey Turner, Mookie Betts?
Well, you have to go with Trey Turner. Mookie Betts doesn't have a hand.
Well, I could put Mookie Betts in right, but you could also go with Mookie's more flexible. I could put him at second base. I could put him in right field. That it's the little things, man.
Unbelievable. The amount of stars that are on these two teams. And you want to know what the funny thing is? Somehow or some way, the networks will screw it up and put it out on like Apple TV or whatever.
So Tuesday, hold on, let me see if I can get this. Tuesday, it's the TBS game.
Okay.
And your pitching matchup on Tuesday night will be Bobby Miller against Zach Wheeler. So the Dodgers
Phillies
are going to get
that one. Phillies win that one.
Wednesday's going to be on ESPN. So you're right. The networks have screwed it up because ESPN gets the game. That'll be Gavin Stone against Christopher Sanchez.
That's whoever scores the most runs.
And then Thursday, I believe, will be MLB Network. Be the Knack, Landon Knack, taking on Aaron Nola.
Well,
so this is
all
round
signs
one.
Points to Philly taking 2 out of 3, but anything's possible.
Yeah, so that should be a fun one. For the second time in a week, the Nationals and Mets play. Again, wild card implications.
Exactly. And that's what this series is. It's divisional baseball and it's fun to watch. It'll be as exciting as last week's division was.
By the way, the Mets should have taken 3 of 4. They wound up getting split. Thanks a lot, Rob Manfred.
Right.
Interleague, you got the Cubs and the Orioles. And here's why I'm saying this is a big one. Because if the Orioles win the series 2 or 3, or even sweep the Cubs, and the Cubs fall to 8-9 back in the wild card, like we talked about before, trade deadline ramifications. Cody Bellinger, Hector Neris for the Cubs potentially. The
Yep.
Orioles need another starter, plus they need some bullpen help as well, because they're relying on our old buddy Craig Kimbrell. So see what happens there. More wild card implications. Braves, Diamondbacks.
The
Still
Diamondbacks,
waiting on the Diamondbacks to get
yeah, that's
going.
what I was just about to say. I'm waiting for this team that was a World Series team last year to start showing what. Mind you, they did take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. You know, you can't take can't not give them where credit is due. But I'm waiting for this team to show up and prove they belong back where they are. And it's second year starter who I vouch for way too much, and that's Corbin Carroll, who has not had a good sophomore season.
And here's the interesting thing. You're right. They won 2 or 3 from the Dodgers. They lost the first game of that series in a terrible way, like a gut punch. They responded.
That's the difference.
Like they responded after a gut punch. So good on them. And they're playing the Padres this afternoon. That's a rubber game. But again, lost Friday night on a gut punch, responded yesterday with a win. So speaking of the Padres, they'll host the Mariners this week. The Mariners need this just to keep the
Mariners need
Astros
the
off
wins, and the Mets need the Mariners to
to
get the
win.
wins.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
we've talked about the
listen, there's no biasness here. Go Mariners.
yeah. I would like to see the Mariners win, but when you still look at that San Diego lineup, it's it's still an impressive lineup, and Machado's getting hot, you know. So I mean, I wouldn't count them out, but yes, I'm a Seattle Mariners fan for this reason.
Listen, you're right, Machado got him, but they made the Luis Ariza dish. It's just like the dude just hits everything.
Yes,
He, he might be the guy who actually hits for 400 at some point.
has the talent to, and so far we've seen in the first few years of his time in the league.
Yeah, and then the last one's the Blue Jays and the Giants. Again, same thing we've been talking about. Wild card implications, both sides.
And if the
Still
Blue
waiting on
Jays,
Toronto. Like,
right, and we talked a lot about the Blue Jays today, but if the
yeah,
Blue Jays drop 2 out of 3, you have to seriously sit down and
blow it up.
you got it.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of Batter Up, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood. Mark, anything special at the Dugout going on?
Actually, we're going on our little month-and-a-half quiet time, but Charlotte will be recording tomorrow on her own for a special record, not about baseball cards, but about autographs. And this is actually pretty cool because it even got me going. So look for that on the Sports Insanity Network. Charlotte will now have a brand new episode coming out.
Awesome. Check that out here on the SIN YouTube page. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Let's see. We got the blogs. Check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, and check out our friends at Sweep the League.
Yes, he got it right. Yes.
You're welcome, Rudy.
Yes, Rudy League. Rudy Campos and Sweep the League at Austin, Texas. Him and Gio the other night with the famous Derek Gervin. Great conversations, great times. So check them out. You can follow them on X or on YouTube.
All right. You can also follow us on Twitter at SInsanityReal, also on Facebook. But for Mark, I'm Mike. We'll talk to y'all next week.